tip. Basically, you need to eat less crap and more food. Hi, and welcome to episode 5 of Naked Talk with Unprocessed Jess. I'm so glad you listened in to today's episode. We're doing a summer health series, and this is a second one, and we're going to be talking about taking a step to really learn what's in your food. Do you really know what's in the food that you're buying, especially if you're not making it at home and you're eating at a restaurant, or you're just really not sure what to look for, or you think all food is the same? Well, this was a huge eye-opener for me when I learned about actually reading food labels and seeing what was in the food that I was eating. I'm going to share a little bit about my story of how I started on my health journey and came about the reasons why I began my health journey, and a few resources that I've found that really started me on my journey and discovering true whole health. When my older girls were in Mother's Day out, I would send them what I thought was a pretty healthy, decent lunch. It usually was Lunchables and a piece of fruit and maybe like a little dessert and a juice box, right? Perfect. What's the problem? I thought, well, it's not a Coke and donut holes like some of the children I saw at daycare when I was a single mom and my girls were really, really little. They would go to a daycare, and I actually was helping there because I thought this is a great way for me to be able to be with my girls and make a little bit of money. And I would see what the kids would eat for breakfast or lunch. And I thought, oh yeah, my kids are great. You know, we got this. So I finally discovered online one night what were actually in the Lunchables. They were filled with nitrites and nitrates, and they actually, a lot of times the meat is a gray color and they add things into it so it has a different color. And I was just totally disgusted, and it really started me on my health journey. And I discovered what GMOs were. I had not heard of those at the time. This was about 8 years ago. And if you don't know, GMOs are genetically modified organisms, and it's something that is not the same as just crossing two different types. Say, for example, people have been doing this for a long time, taking two different, say, apples, for example, two different types and blending those together. These are where actually two different species are put together. So a quick example would be, say you don't want your tomatoes to freeze in the winter, and so you take something from a salmon which can be in colder temperatures, and you take one of their genes of a salmon and mix it with a tomato. And the idea is that it will be able to survive a harsher, colder winter. Well, I don't know about you, but that's pretty scary to me. I don't want to be eating something that may not even have, like a tomato with a fish gene in it, or vice versa. So it is different, taking two different variations of the same kind of food and mixing it. Once I discovered that, it really changed my world, because here I was, a mom with 3 very small children. I was already overwhelmed with just the day-to-day of taking care of all their needs, trying to be a wife, and taking care of my own needs, which in my story I shared in episode 1, quickly found out I was not taking care of myself and probably not being the best wife I could have been, because I was just trying to do so many things and was stressed and overwhelmed. So now, on top of that, I'm poisoning my family and myself, and it was just very overwhelming for me and stressful. I don't want you to feel that way, however, so I'm trying to pass on some of the things that I did that did not work out so great with some of the things that I did or do now that really made a difference in my life, so you don't have to go through that struggle that I did. So back then, I really thought that wheat bread and lunch meat was healthy. I thought, oh, it's whole. Okay, I heard whole wheat or wheat is good, so I'm just going to buy wheat bread. Well, wrong. So when I discovered label reading and I turned that whole wheat bread around and started reading the labels, I was just really confused. I knew back then, I thought, oh, okay, there's some type of wheat in it. something must be kind of holding it together. I mean, it's just bread, right? Like a flour or wheat or something was in it. But I had no idea what the ingredients were in a store bread. And a lot of it is to keep it on the shelf longer because people are busy. They don't want to be bothered with or inconvenienced with going to the store several times. So they're adding ingredients and preservatives to make things last longer on the shelf. But you really need to stop and say, okay, is my health deteriorating worth the time I'm saving of going to the store once a week or once every couple of weeks? I'm a holistic health coach, but I'm also a human and a woman and a parent, and I'm sharing my experience and advice with you and things that have worked for me. But remember that this is for informational purposes only. It's not used to diagnose, treat, or cure any illness or disease, and you always want to consult with your healthcare professional before implementing a rigorous exercise routine or a really big change to your overall diet or the way that you are eating. So that being said, I want to share someone who was one of the first people that I discovered online that really led me to this journey. And she's known as the Food Babe, and her name is Vani Hari, and it's Vanihari. And now she is huge and has led a huge movement and a very big advocate for us knowing what's in our food. And she has a group of people who support her and follow her and help make change, and she calls them the Food Babe Army. But I do want to let you know that she is a great resource, and she really was instrumental in me changing my life as far as food and how I looked at it, and really just opening my eyes to the fact that I need to take this seriously and I need to be my own health advocate because no one else is going to do that for me or my family like I can do. So she does have a book called The Food Babe Way, and in there, she goes a little bit more advanced. We're really going to be talking about basic things that you can do now for our summer series to put into action. But I think it's a great resource if you want to learn more about it once you're on your food journey and you're comfortable with reading labels and a few things that you need to look for. It's a great resource to add. But in her book, she has a quote, and it's from the FDA's Deputy Commissioner of Food. And I really want to bring this to your attention just to know that just because something has a title or an organization doesn't necessarily mean it's in alignment with your beliefs. And it's so important to look back to the history of these organizations. I know I can be just as guilty of hearing like, oh, it's the such and such Association of America. And I'm totally picking that random, or something bureau or coalition or whatever it is. The name sounds great, but things can be formed and have a name, and marketing's really great. And you need to look and see the history of it. Why was it formed? Where is it funded? If you go back to the dollars, that will give you a really good idea of the place that the information is coming from, and also look and see who supports that organization or association. So that being said, here's the quote. We simply do not have the information to vouch for the safety of many of these chemicals. We do not know the volume of particular chemicals that are going into the food supply. So that is from the FDA's Deputy Commissioner for Food. I want to encourage you to really take this into your own hands, and you do the due diligence to just make a start now. It might be something small, but this is your body, and food is something that is so important to you and your health, and it's really worth the investment of your time and effort. So I want you to do something. You might be listening to this in your car or at work or the gym or while you're doing errands and you're not at home. So if you're not at home right now, set an alarm on your phone, a reminder to do this when you get home. I want you to go look in your pantry and your refrigerator and really think about what's in it. Is it mainly boxed? And if it is, what are the ingredients? If there's the first three ingredients are so important because that is what mainly makes up that item that you're buying. Something that's a little bit, right now you want to stick to the basics like looking for sugar, or corn syrup, but there are also other names that sugar can go under, and there's ways that the companies can get away from showing the amounts of it. They just break it up and do it in a different form, if that makes sense. But to begin, just look at the label and read it. How much sugar is in there? What are the ingredients? If it's a really, really long list and you can't pronounce most of the names in that list, that's a great sign that it's a processed food and you really want to minimize that food and at the very least know at least what's in it so you can make a better choice of whether or not that's something you want to add a lot into your daily diet. Remember, food affects your mood and your gut health, which affects all areas of your life. All areas of your life are connected and they affect the other, and especially your productivity in your business or your job. So there's no escaping it. You just can't compartmentalize one area of your life. Notice I said stop and think, not stop, freak out, grow all your own food, move out 200 miles from civilization because you're poisoning yourself and your family. Which sounds extreme, but this is some of the thoughts that went through my mind. I was freaked out, thought I was poisoning my family, and there were about 4 to 5 things that I felt I could buy at the grocery store besides fresh fruits and vegetables, and my family did not like it. I threw out pretty much everything in our pantry, and I started making my own almond bread, and just was really miserable, honestly, trying to juggle everything and now totally stressed out about the food. I went from the life of a pretty average American mom with toddlers, which is sad, but of going to fast food a lot of times during the week to absolutely none, making my own bread, eating 5 things plus fruits and vegetables. And as you can imagine, that was not quite sustainable. So what do you think happens? Probably you've been in the same scenario with whether it's fitness or a relationship or time management. You do great for a couple of weeks or maybe even a month or so, but then you get so stressed and overwhelmed, you just fall off the wagon and go back to maybe even worse than you were when you started. So this was me, and that's exactly what happened. And I started noticing that people didn't want to eat at our house. My boys, my stepsons, when they would come over, they had always eaten at their mom's house, even if it was a random time of the day. And I thought, oh, that's strange, So, yeah, it was a big change for us. So I would suggest if you are going to start making these changes, do them slowly. Take a few things at a time so you have a better chance to set yourself up for success, and be patient with your family. Or if you don't have a family or children right now, be patient with your friends because they're new to this or they might not even be on board with you yet. So I highly suggest taking this in steps, but being informed and keep working towards those goals. I mentioned before about the Dirty Dozen. This is a great way if you want to start adding in organic foods, but you're new to this or you're not sure. You can download the Dirty Dozen on EWG.org. That's the environmentalworkinggroup.org. And these are the foods with the highest concentrate of pesticides and chemicals. And start just implementing maybe 1 or 2 or even 3 of those you want to do organic. For example, grapes. Maybe you say this next shopping trip, I will buy organic grapes versus regular grapes. But then there's also the Clean 15 on the same website, EWG.org, and this is a list of the 15 foods that have the least amount of pesticides or chemicals, so those you can maybe bypass buying organic, and then you're not so overwhelmed and feel like you have to do a major overhaul all at once. Remember, you want to make sustainable changes, not radical things that you're going to implement for a few weeks or maybe a month and then forget about. We want to start adding in the good so you can crowd out the things that are not desirable for your life. And before you know it, those small steps will be a big change. So now I want you to notice the amount of fruits and vegetables that you have in your kitchen and things that don't require a food label. So that would mean, for example, an apple. If you look at an apple, what do you think the ingredient is? That's if it's not a genetically modified apple, of course. And there are ways you can tell, actually by the barcode, if it's not by the labeling in the store. There are certain numbers you can look at. I'll have to add that to the show notes, but you can tell if something's organic by the number. But even that aside, it's always better to opt for a whole food versus a processed food. So an apple is just that. It's an apple. Grapes are grapes, and etc. So how many whole foods do you have in your kitchen right now? And hopefully if it's slim pickings there, you want to work on, okay, well, I need to buy some more true whole foods the next time I go to the grocery store. Quick tip. Basically, you need to eat less crap and more food. So when you think of crap, think of C, carbonated drinks, R, refined sugars, A, artificial sweeteners, and P, processed foods. Those are the foods we talked about that you would find in boxes and that have a lot of ingredients in them. And more food is that whole foods, fruits, vegetables, and then you want to drink water when at all possible. And something you want to also be aware of on the labeling, and this is something I didn't catch on to even when I first started reading labels, was the serving size. So a lot of times you might quickly glance at something, and for example, you look at the sugar and say, oh, it has 5 grams of sugar. That's not so bad. But wait a minute. Then you look at the serving size, and maybe there's 4 servings in that container, and now you're 4 times that amount of sugar. So really pay attention to the serving size. That's something that can sneak up on you. So often we don't realize the amount of sugar that we're taking in our food in general, but also in our drinks. And that's why it's important to mainly drink water and look at things like fruit juices. Read that, because a lot of times there's really not even a lot of actual fruit that's in that. It might be additives in there, and you really want to try to stay away from that and get your calories from nutritious whole foods. Remember I touched on looking at those first 3 ingredients of your food item, because those are the ingredients that make up the majority of that item. So some things to look out for are sugar, high fructose corn syrup, hydrogenated oils, and artificial coloring. And the artificial coloring, this is just something that a lot of people are sensitive to, and it affects them in a very negative way. And I noticed in my own daughter, my youngest, she went to public school this last year, and I had noticed that she was eating a lot more sugars than normal, for school parties and treats and things that she would get there. It just seemed like she was having a lot more sugar than she had before. And I did notice a difference in her behavior. And so what I did is started really being intentional about looking for like red number 40 and different dyes. And it's just in a lot of stuff. One great option is to look at things that they can be colored, but they're through beets or veggies. And in Europe, you'll notice that some of the things in Europe, they use these vegetables for the coloring. But then they make the same thing for us here in the U.S., but it has the genetically modified organisms or it has the artificial colors. So that is things that you can look for in alternatives. And most importantly, just be aware of what's in your food. And if you know it's something that you shouldn't have, maybe minimize that. And I've said before, I'm very transparent on my blog and other social media platforms that I'm on. We are not a 100% unprocessed family. I am Unprocessed Jess, but the idea behind that is to live life less processed. And that's in all areas of your life, whether it's the food you eat, the relationships you have, in your spirituality, or the way you interact with others and in your community. But you do want your day-to-day things that you have every day to be as unprocessed as possible. And then you can add in the extra those things that are maybe not so healthy, but overall your body is being loved and respected and getting clean, whole food. I want to leave you with one more quick tip. When you're going to your next grocery store trip, Try to stay on the perimeter of the store. This is something I help my coaching clients with, how to shop a grocery store. We all started somewhere, right? And I never thought about it, but a lot of times you'll find that the fresh fruits and vegetables, maybe the seafood department, those things are on the perimeter or the outside of your grocery store. Once you start getting into the inside aisles, that's where you'll find the processed foods, the packaged foods. Doesn't mean that everything on the perimeter is healthy, but you're going to find more of the fresh things. So maybe try, just see how much you can get done on the perimeter. And then once you get into those aisles, really look around and see what's in the food that you're buying. You might even have something that you normally buy and look around that section and there may be a better alternative. Maybe it's a bread that has less ingredients in it. One thing we love is Ezekiel bread and Dave's Killer bread. Well, Ezekiel is sprouted bread. It is a little bit of an acquired taste, I guess you could say. My husband is very open to health. He's from Europe and he actually was healthier than I was years ago. And he even found it hard to eat. So we would lightly toast it. That helped a little. But Dave's Killer bread actually has bagels and different types of bread out. And once again, read the labels, but it's cleaner ingredients. So you might find something like that next to your regular item that may be a little healthier or not have some of those ingredients. So there's a few things you can do. I want to leave you with this action step. The next time you go to buy groceries, stop and read your labels and try to replace 1 to 2 items that you normally buy with a healthier alternative or an organic alternative. And try to do that every shopping trip and just see where it goes and how much it changes your eating for the week. That's it for our Summer Health Series Part 2. And next episode, we're going to be talking round butts and flat guts and why they're important for your health. So until next time, remember, healthy mind, body, business.